It's time for Talking Sports, Birmingham's only weekly sports update to put you in the game. Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. Now, here is your winning action host, Kip Keefer, and the legend.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Talking Sports. It's Saturday morning. It's a huge football day. We've had a lot of weekends without a lot of big games. This is not one of them. Many, many important games in the chase for the college football playoffs. We're going to cover it all for you. Kip Keefer with you we don't have the legend this week. The legend is not available for the show, and we are certainly going to miss him. Huge part of the entertainment factor here and great information. The legend is not ducking out because Alabama came up short in the game against LSU last week. He's been very forthcoming on Feinbaum a couple of times this week and a lot of tweets graciously accepting that LSU outplayed the Tide and deserved to win the game. But unfortunately, he's not with us today. But we're going to have a very special guest to be able to fill in the blanks and help us to kind of decipher everything that's going on. We're brought to you by, of course, Birmingham Greyhound Racing, the action capital of the South, and that statement has never been truer. The fabulous sports card contest every week is available along with the best of racing action, both live and simulcast, and now the new in gaming floor environment, which is absolutely phenomenal, and everybody's enjoying that. So if you haven't been out to check it out, it is great. Come on out. It's no worries about hours anymore. Birmingham Greyhound Racing now 24/7, 365. So come out and check it out today. We're going to bring to the show our very special guest. A lot of Birmingham sports fans are going to be thrilled to be reunited with one of the favorite personalities that graced our airwaves here for several years. I was privileged to work with her on several different radio programs, including the Morning After, which we came on board every Sunday morning and gave you all the rundown on everything that happened in SEC football. So I guess we can kind of unofficially call this one the morning before, because our guest this week on the show, the First Lady of SEC football, the one, the only Terre Quilliam, calling in from Dallas. And Terry, welcome to Talking Sports, your debut here, and we're really excited to have you.
Hi, Kip. Thank you so much for having me. And I have to tell you, I love Birmingham and Alabama so much. The best thing would be to be there in Alabama, but the next best thing is to get to join you on the show.
Well, that's great. I know you probably have a message. You made so many great associations and relationships with listeners of our program before, and those are great times that we have fantastic memories of. That show became extremely popular, and sports fans here really connected with your passion and knowledge and enthusiasm about the game. So I know you want to give them a quick message before we get started here.
I do, and I want to let everyone know I miss you. K-Dub, thank you to the Pelham Gator. Now, the Gator was contacting me a lot and keeping up with me, but something happened after a Saturday in Jacksonville, Kip, and I've been hearing less from the Gator since then. But Terry and all those great listeners, I miss them, and I still have to say, go Dogs.
That's right, and the Dogs have a big, big game later today, and we're going to talk about that. Just to give you a little bit instant credibility, Terry is, for all disclosure purposes, a proud Georgia graduate, big Georgia Bulldog fan, but very, very good at being impartial and just speaking her mind on SEC football. So we're going to get into all of that. Just for a little extra credibility, here's a photo with Terry giving advice to Kirby Smart, the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, and all of the innovations that the Georgia program has probably came from this conversation. So
I would just like to let everyone know that conversation did not happen immediately prior to the South Carolina game.
That's right. He needed to have a conversation with you before that one. Okay, Terry, let's get into the real heart of the matter. The College Football Playoff Committee for the second week gathered in Dallas in your backyard. Were you in on that meeting, or did they?
You know, they wanted me out in Grapevine, but no, unfortunately. but there is more secrecy out there in Grapevine than there is in the Vatican.
It's crazy. All right, well, so there's no dispute with the number one team. LSU has earned that spot. They've beaten 4 top 20 teams. But let's talk about number 2 and number 3. Ohio State certainly on the eye test has been spectacular. A little bit weak in the resume department, in my opinion, but the proof is going to be in the pudding in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I would agree with you that the resume looks a little weak, but when you look at that schedule, it's a schedule, Kip, that should have been stronger than it is. It's not so much that Ohio State has packed their schedule with cupcakes. It's just rather that wins that you thought would be a bigger win, like Wisconsin, have not turned out to be so. I think that there's no denying the potency of their offense with Justin Fields running it there. I mean, he is lighting it up and down the field. But what they haven't had is the quality of an opponent to be able to see how would their defense really play when they're up against another super high-powered, turbocharged offense.
And they got Penn State and Michigan in the last 2 games, so they're going to have to win their way into the college playoff. We'll skip Clemson. We'll talk about them more in our 3rd segment because we're running short on time. But of course, in the last 30 seconds of this segment, the controversy, Alabama, Georgia 4-5, folks around here are not real happy with that.
I can understand that they are not very happy with that, sort of the way that Georgia wasn't happy at being left out of the CHP championship last year. You never know what the committee is going to value more. The idea that they would value wins over bad losses, that way this week, it could totally change next week.
Terre, let's carry that over and we got to go to break. We're going to hold that thought. We'll get right back to you. This is Talking Sports. Welcome back to Talking Sports. Kip Keefer with our special guest, the First Lady of SEC Football, Terre Quilliam. This segment brought to you by Chemco, who is all-purpose is the only way to describe this great company. For any business need, they do it all, from plumbing to lighting to everything in between. If you need help with your business, your building, Chemco is the all-star team to call. We had Herb Winches on as a guest a couple weeks ago. Herb said he's used Chemco at his restaurant down on Lake Martin. They are all-stars, and we're proud to have them as a sponsor. Terre, you were right in the middle of your thoughts with Alabama and Georgia. We had to go to break, so please continue.
Well, I feel like it's a lot of gnashing of teeth on the part of our Roll Tide friends, and I can completely understand their position in doing that. However, if you look at it in some ways, you might put the odds on the Roll Tide fans having a better chance to be in the CFP than Georgia, in that Georgia has to win every single matchup they have left this year. Auburn, we'll talk about later, but Auburn is going to be a real bear playing down at Jordan-Hare, and then have to beat LSU in the SEC championship, the same LSU that put up 46 points at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So I feel like should Georgia falter at any point along that way, Alabama is going to be sitting there ready to step in. And in a way, they're given a gift in that they don't have to play in a championship game at the end of the year. Easy wins for them in the last 2 games.
Well, you are always the masterful at the segue. So let's go right into that Auburn-Georgia game because it's the game of the day, the number 4 ranked team in the college football poll. Number 12, Auburn, and I'll just get your thoughts real quick just to kind of set the stage here. I think Auburn's ranking, in my mind, is really a bit unjust. Their losses are to number 1 LSU and to then number 7 Florida, who's still ranked 11th, and both of those games were true road games in Baton Rouge and Gainesville, respectively. But they have a win on their resume against the number 6 team in the poll. I think they should be higher ranked.
I completely agree with you. Auburn is actually the most undervalued team in the nation right now. That could all change on Saturday, depending on what happens. But those losses that they have also, if you look at 46-41 was the score versus Bama, my goodness, they only lost to LSU in Baton Rouge by 3 points, 23-20. It was a loss, but barely a loss off of their home turf. Same thing with the loss to Florida was not a blowout loss. It was a by the hair of your chinny chin chin loss.
Right.
Auburn's got a lot of weapons, and they are going to be ready this weekend at Jordan-Hare. And I think they're the team that can make the biggest jump in the polls this weekend.
Yeah, that defense is legit. They held that unstoppable LSU offense to just 2 touchdowns, which was quite an accomplishment. All right, Georgia comes in a 3-point favorite in this game. The all-time series, interesting. This is the oldest rivalry in the South. The first game was played in 1894. Georgia has won 58 times, Auburn 55, and 8 games have ended in ties. So you can't get much closer than that.
No, you can't. And one of the little known facts I love about that original game is it was played in Piedmont Park in Atlanta. That's just so awesome to think back on. In the era since we have had Gus at Auburn and since we have been so lucky back at Georgia so that we've got the smartest football coach there, actually we've owned Auburn basically because in Kirby versus Gus times, it's been, we won in 15, 16, and 18, lost in 2017, but then came back to beat them in the SEC championship. So if you're just looking at the most recent era between Gus and Kirby, the ball would have to tilt toward Georgia.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game because the strength of both of these teams obviously is their defenses. Georgia's coming off shutouts of SEC opponents in 2 of their last 3 games, and they held Florida down to just 17 points. Florida did better than that, of course, against this vaunted Auburn defense. So it comes down a lot to the matchups of who's on offense, and Georgia certainly has the edge in the quarterback ranks with Jake Fromm and his experience over a very talented but a freshman in Bo Nix. And also the Georgia running back contingent, pretty strong. Auburn's still beat up in that area, so maybe a slight edge. You can see why the 3-point favorite designation, but you can't deny the last time Georgia traveled to Jordan-Hare, the final score was 40-16. So this is going to be a big challenge for the Bulldogs.
It is, and you know what, Kip? If you were going to base the score on the number of people praying for a team to win, pretty sure it would be Auburn because they're not only going to have the War Eagle Nation praying for them on Saturday, but they've got all of the Alabama football nation praying for them as well this Saturday.
Yeah, and it's very unusual for Alabama to have to root for Auburn. I guess they're going to be holding their nose and taking oxygen shots all the whole time. So that's going to be...
This is what happens when you lose a game. You have to root for your arch rival.
That's right. It's what makes the sport great. We only got about 30 seconds. Let's talk about Alabama's trip to Mississippi State and Starkville. The Tide, what do you expect to see? A team that's stung by what happened last week and has a hangover? Or do you think you're going to see an angry nest of hornets go to Starkville and take care of business?
I think that if I were Joe Moorhead, I would already be in my car driving out of town because I think Alabama is going to come in and wipe them out. I expect Alabama to have a statement win on Saturday.
We got to go to break. When we come back, we will continue this and have winner steak dinner. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. Talking sports on a busy Saturday. We're going to talk about some of the big games here in winner steak dinner. Have to tell you, this segment of Talking Sports brought to you by Crane Works, an outstanding company. If you see all this construction here in Birmingham, and pretty much anywhere you go, the big monster cranes probably came from Crane Works, which is a national recognized great company. They have been a part of the Alabama sports scene for many years, and we are just delighted to have them supporting Talking Sports every week. If you have any equipment needs, large or small, Crane Works, the go-to company, not just here at home, but anywhere that you're watching or listening to the program. Okay, we're going to continue our special guest in our this is a joyous occasion for both of us because we enjoyed teaming up on the radio. This is our first opportunity here on Talking Sports to talk football. We got Terre Quilliam, if you're just joining us, who's in Dallas now, but was certainly made a strong statement here in Birmingham during her time on sports radio and on political radio on our news talk station. But now, Terry, let's focus a little bit more on the big games of the weekend. I'm going to give you my picks, and it's your job to kind of interpret those and either agree or disagree or whatever comes to mind. The first one is a game coming up in less than 20 minutes now, kicking off in Columbia, Missouri. The Florida Gators trying to stay in the hunt. They're ranked number 11. They go to Missouri. You've seen these teams up close and personal the last couple of weeks. I think Missouri, 5-0 at home, a 7-point underdog against Florida. I think they've got a real chance to pull the upset today.
I think they have a great chance, especially with Kelly Bryant's return today, Kip. And there's no denying that since entering the SEC, Missouri's 4-3 against the Gators. They've owned the series recently. Florida has a lot to play for. They could conceivably still win the SEC East if Georgia stumbles and doesn't win either one of their last two games. But Missouri has been dominant at home, and with Kelly Bryant's return, I think they're going to pull off the upset.
Yeah,
I agree with you there.
I'm right with you. All right, we had a kind of slick skip over Clemson when we were going down the top six. Clemson is playing today at home against Wake Forest, who arguably, looking at their record and accomplishment, is the second best team in the ACC this year. Hard to believe the Demon Deacons have risen to that point, but I don't know if it's so much that they're strong or the rest of the league is just so weak. But Wake Forest is coming off a really bad performance last week against a mediocre Virginia Tech team. Maybe they were looking ahead to Clemson. Clemson's giving 34 points in this game. I got to tell you, I'm on board with Wake Forest.
I know, and Kip, you think those 34 points and you're going to go with Wake Forest. I would stick with Clemson. Clemson is an offensive machine. Everyone can look at Clemson and say, look, but their schedule is weak. Their schedule is the conference that they're in, that Wake Forest is part of. I don't see anything to make me think that that is going to be any less of a good win than when they beat the pants off of Georgia Tech 52-14 in the opening game. I think also Clemson feels that they need to make a statement based on what they're seeing in the CFP results right now. So I am going to bet you one of our traditional steak dinners at Ruth's Chris that Clemson wins and covers in this game.
All right, well, this segment's called Winner, Winner, Steak Dinner, so that's perfectly appropriate. Okay, let's move on. Of all the states in the country, one of the most indistinguishable is Iowa, but I like both of their teams today. The Iowa Hawkeyes, Minnesota, went from 17th to 8th in this playoff, a huge jump. All of a sudden, they're the darling of the conference, of not just the Big Ten Conference, but of the whole country. Minnesota following that Penn State game with a trip to Iowa City. The Hawkeyes are ranked 22nd and have a very good defense. And it's kind of funny. Talk about, I'm going to take Iowa in this game, but you have the spread in front of you. Talk about how odd that is that the number 8 team is a 3-point underdog to the number 22 team.
Well, that just makes it really clear, Kip, that no one actually believes that Minnesota is the number 8 team. This is an abomination. When the number 8 team is playing the number 22 team, and the number 22 team is picked by 3 points, that's the kind of thing that no wonder Alabama fans are wanting to tear their hair out at the CFP committee's decisions. They cannot possibly be the number 8 team if the spread is correct.
Also in the great state of Iowa, in Ames, which is a lovely place to visit, by the way, Iowa State is hosting Texas, and you're in Dallas. You're surrounded by Longhorn fans. They had giant expectations coming into this season, but what's the tone there now when you talk about hook 'em horns?
I'll tell you what, the horns are drooping here in Texas. Texas fans are really disappointed with the way this season has gone, and who can blame them? They had high hopes following their victory over Georgia in the bowl game at the end of last year. The only problem was the Georgia football team didn't really show up to that bowl game.
That's right.
The Texans here were coming into 2019 very optimistic. They're thinking it's the third year of the new coach, Tom Herman, that they had sought out, and this was going to be the year they were going to make it happen. Absolutely, there was a victorious feeling, a feeling of optimism, all the way up to the Red River shootout here in Dallas. After the shootout, what seems really deflated are Texas's hopes and feelings this season.
I mean, they almost lost the next week to Kansas at home. Unbelievable. We got to go to break. We have one more segment here on Talking Sports. We are having a great time and hope you are too. A big college football day is right around the corner. Back with more. Stay right where you are. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Talking sports. We are having a great time. It's just going too fast, but have the insights and perspective of Terre Quilliam, outstanding First Lady of SEC football. This segment of Talking Sports is brought to you by M&M Electric. Like my man, the legend, always says, don't get fried, people. Call M&M. It's not worth it for you to try to fix it. Get the experts in there. Marcus and Marcus Sr., M&M do a great job. They can take care of all of your electrical needs, however large or small they are. Don't get fried. Make that phone call. M&M Electric, also a proud sponsor for our program. Okay, Terry, we've kind of covered everything. I guess the other game, real quick, we'll just spend a few seconds on it. Baylor's still undefeated. They're number 12 in the country. They host Oklahoma today, who is the number 10 team in this latest poll. Oklahoma barely survived against Iowa State last week. This is a game down in Waco. Does Baylor have any chance here?
Well, if you are going to go by the feelings of all the Baylor fans here, they're feeling like this is going to be their time. This is going to be an upset today. The roads are full of the fans that are streaming south to Waco. Baylor fans believe, I don't know. You know, it's the Sooner people here in Dallas, and we've got a whole lot of them, are feeling like this is going to be one more big statement win for them later on today here in town. Personally, I can't see Baylor pulling it off, but I really wish they would.
Yeah, it would be great to see, but Oklahoma, of course, coming off a loss to Kansas State and a narrow Houdini escape against Iowa State. Okay, Terry, on our show, we've had fun with this segment with just about everybody that's come on. We dubbed the special guest on our show the Empress or Emperor for the day, the Czar or Czarina in this case. You, Terre Quilliam, First Lady of the SEC, are in charge of all football. What is the first proclamation, major change that you would make of the great sport we love?
Well, since the part of the sport that I really love is college football, the first change that I would want to make is to change the scheduling of college football games. I feel like when you've gotten to the point where folks are walking out, leaving, or not showing up on Alabama football games because the opponent is so unworthy, it's time for us to really look. Is there a reason to be scheduling FBS schools? Why not have Power 5 teams play Power 5 teams? With one exception, you could have one wild card in your schedule. I mean, seriously, I'm asking, who in Alabama wants to see Duke, New Mexico State, Southern Miss, or Western Carolina? No one. Admonishing the fans for not staying in 95-degree heat versus 4 cupcake teams, it's ridiculous. The games are expensive. Season tickets are expensive, not just at Alabama. At Auburn, at LSU, at Georgia, at South Carolina, season tickets are expensive. Plus the large donations that we are asked to shell out. To me, for what you shell out for season tickets, you ought to be able to get to see a real ball game. And excuse me, I don't think the Murray State Racers versus Georgia, that just doesn't cut it.
No, it certainly doesn't. I think that is an excellent change. If we're going to have a playoff system, let's have the big teams play the big teams. It just makes perfect sense. Outstanding job as Empress of Football. I think we need to give you that job for real. We are
thank you.
just about out of time.
My favorite job.
We will, Terry, thank you so much for being with us and so much great information. I know you're fired up for football, so am I. Everybody enjoy the games today. We'll see you next week right here on Talking Sports.